On this demo, we're going to paint on a small panel, this 5" by 7" canvas panel. Though this is very small, this painting. So on this demo, we'll talk about expectations, the drawing part, what's important in the video or in the painting, and how we can perhaps improvise. So this is 5" by 7". I've printed off much the same size. So I can have a look on my canvas and make a guesstimate where that is there. And when I say where that is just a white blob. Well, it's not white, I've added a bit of raw sienna in there, but it's the lightest part of my painting, and I'm going to put it there. So that's the lightest part of the painting. Everything else is going to be slightly darker than that. So before I probably go any further than that, I probably need to make sure the rest of it's going to fit in, really. But I just put that there as a bit of an anchor, really. So if I look at my drawing or my reference here, where I've got that house there, which I think is in about the right place, and I can move things about to a certain degree. But if I were to just go up from there, I can get that hill there, that line. So I'll just do the same, go up, and then that comes down there. And you can trace this if you want, but I think sometimes it's useful for you to have a go at drawing it freehand. Again, I can just perhaps even count how many times that little square will go in there. Just guess it. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So that gives me where that path goes. And then I can have a look to see it goes just past the white bit, which I've got there. It goes off at that angle, so you can measure it, and then it changes. So I haven't got the angle quite right. And then there's a bit of an S. And then that comes right down to the corner there. So that's the path taking us into the scene. And from here, we can make a suggestion where these lines are here. Now, these are all just reference points just to get things in the right place. So it looks like there's perhaps a bit of a crossroad there. There's something there, I don't know what it is, but it's just a shape that breaks up and gives the opportunity for a shadow there, which is quite nice. So these obviously members who've got this reference image here, when you look at it up close, it could be a little bit overwhelming, all this detail, but don't be overwhelmed by it. And remember, this is not a painting, this is an image, and think of it very much as I used to do, well, I still do lots of master studies, and I may have been doing a master study, a landscape like this with a building in it or something, and doing it this size, just doing small paintings because I was learning, and I think it's a good exercise. And then I'd be disappointed because I didn't have all these tiny little brush marks and detail. But then I'd look at the details of the reference image and find out it's as 1 meter by 2 meters or something. So you're never going to get this level of detail with these tiny little brushes. Well, even with small brushes, you would have to get the tiny little fiddly brushes out to do all these little marks. So have realistic expectations what you're going to achieve. But I'm going to go for something really painterly. But when we step back from this, it'll look like there's a bunch of houses there with the light coming across with interesting shadows, and there's a track that leads us in, and then we've got lovely colour harmony. So that's all I'm looking to achieve. So next to this lightest part of the painting, we've got another shape, which is slightly darker and more towards yellow. And then on the other side of that is another shape. So when you have clusters of houses like this, it's tricky because your mind plays tricks on you, and you can easily get lost. So have expectations of we're not going to get it exactly like that. Well, I'm not, you might do, but I know I'm not. But as long as I get the impression. So probably what I'm about to mix here is already what's on there. So this is a small canvas panel that's, I bought one, and they don't have a lot of, they're not primed particularly well, these panels, so I prime them again with acrylic gesso, and I've put a little bit of burnt umber and white there just to, or maybe burnt sienna or something, just to give it a bit of colour. So we've got the rooftop here, which this won't really show up until we put the trees around it and perhaps some shadows. And that one there. And we need a bit of patience because it'll take a moment or two for the painting to reveal itself, and it might not be until the very end. And we've got, again, the easiest way to do stuff like this is just do not think about it as houses and whatever, it's just shapes. And now right in there in that corner, it's just a dark shape. So I was given the colours out here. So we've got titanium white, primary yellow, raw sienna, Zion crimson, ultramarine blue, and I've put some phthalo blue, which I'm thinking about maybe going really blue with that distant mountain to try something. But I will get back to painting from photographs. I'm enjoying doing these studies from these mid-journey images, and I'm learning a lot about what's a good composition, where I'm going to need to change my photographs, or even some of your photographs. I know a lot of you have shared photos with me, which I just haven't necessarily had a chance to get round to paint, but I will at some point, I'm sure. So keep sending them. As you know yourself, you've got to be in the mood to paint a particular scene, but I'm certainly all enthusiastic about painting these images at the moment. So this is just random shapes, patiently, as you are patiently watching this, if you're still watching, or even painting along with me, which would be great. Just building up, and it's very, very abstract. I've got 3 brushes on the go. I've got 1 brush for this light area, 1 for the roof colour, and now we've got another slightly different colour there. So I can use these brushes to make corrections and so on. So next to this shape is a little shape, which is actually a chimney. And there's a triangle there. And that's in the wrong place. That should have been more over here. But I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to, or should we? Should we worry about it? What we can do, I shall just make this building a little bit longer. Like that. And then there's another dark, which when we're looking at these tiny little shapes, it's actually hard to see what colour is that. So I'm more worried about the tonal value. So that's just a dark there, which actually tells us that the light is coming in from this way. And then slightly more red. So this is not easy to do this, but possibly because it's small. You know, you could paint it slightly larger if you wanted to. But doing small paintings aren't necessarily easier. I think you can get away with having less in them. You know, a large painting, you probably need more in it. And there's another shape there. And then we've got another bit of light, which is almost as light as our lightest light. And if we start putting in triangle shapes, you know, they'll become buildings off in the distance there. You know, and shapes that could be rooftops and then have a little shape like that, that's a chimney. So that's okay. we've got another building there that just takes us across here. I say best don't call them buildings, just shapes. So another brush, which I'll mix up this warm green. So if we start with yellow and blue, bit of raw sienna. Raw sienna is very similar to yellow ochre. I think it's just slightly more towards brown. So it's too dark. So I shall lighten it with a bit of white and yellow. Too green, add a bit of red. And this is only on just normal printer paper, it's not photo paper this, so it's not a high quality reference image, which I don't mind because a lot of the detail I can't see, and I've purposely printed it small like this so I really can't see the detail, so it's going to force me just to paint these shapes. So there's that row of bushes or whatever. Careful not to lose all my building. And that in itself will hide a lot of detail. And slightly darker green. So it's making quite a nice warm green, that raw sienna. And just be careful, that's way too dark. And way too green. So here we can paint these trees. We can sharpen up there. The tree is actually going slightly over the building here, which just adds a nice bit of connection. And let's flick that up there a little bit. Right. Let's get these distant fields in. So that line is here, which is just running along here. Then off in the distance here, I think we could simplify this a little bit. So let's just get the right tonal value. There's a lot of white in there because it's completely desaturated, because it's going to send it off into the distance. So we've got that other tree there. Might be a good idea just to make a note where that's going to be. Again, that's nice and warm. Get the right brush. I think that's one I used. So it looks green, but it's actually more, almost more orange. So from that house, this tree goes off here, and again, that won't make sense until we put the sky in. We're just going to put that in there. Gives us a nice crisp edge along here. So we haven't started with a drawing, but we are doing drawing, and that's, I suppose, what we need to be thinking about is painting is drawing. So, you need to perhaps practice to a certain degree. If you trace, it's fine, you can get your skeleton down nice and accurate of what's needed, but throughout the stage, you're going to find you lose that drawing. So by having a few drawing skills, you can get back to where you need to. So call that the field there off in the distance, and then I'm going to try this phthalo blue, bit of white, and this is thinking back to when we've been out traveling in the camper van and so on, and you're traveling later in the day, and then you just see those distant blue hills. You take your photograph and it looks nothing like that. So let's try and tap into my memory. So let's pull that up there a little bit. Worst case scenario, if it's just too much, I can just wipe it off and paint over it, but let's give it a go. So soft edges off in the distance here. And I think I'll just go with more ultramarine blue and a bit of that green and pull these trees in front of that one. So using tonal value. And we're also putting dark against light here. And if you're interested, the brushes I'm using, that's a size 2 Filbert, Robert Mee & Co. Bravara. I'm not sponsored by Robert Mee & Co. But I think for these little small paintings, you might need to have a few small brushes on the go. So let's get the sky in. So I've improvised there a little bit, and time will tell whether it was a good idea or not. So lighter for the sky. And the sky normally is the lightest part of the painting, but in this instance, it's not. This is the lightest part of the painting here. So by having the sky slightly muted and almost grey, which steers towards blue, and maybe towards purple as it gets to the bottom, just to check, but it makes this seem even brighter. So we can paint into there, soft edges. A lot of softness off in the distance there, which is going to create distance. Could sort the shape of that tree out. So hopefully you're enjoying this video. Please hit that like and subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. And a big welcome to new members who've joined me on the website, and the non-English speaking members who've joined me on YouTube. Don't forget on the YouTube member videos, the photos, check the link in the description for the links for that. But on the website, if you're an English speaking member, you've got access to all the videos, reference images. Here are a few of the recent demos we've done on the website, plus also the beginner's course that I'm building as we speak. So you'll have access to the videos as I make them if you're a tier 2 member. So check out the link in the description. Hope you enjoy the rest of the video, and so don't forget to like and subscribe. Right, so that's enough fiddling. Getting carried away with that. So let's put this field in here. So anything you've used with phthalo blue, I'd put that brush to one side and probably give that a clean before you put it in your oil well, if you use an oil well to store your brushes, because it will just dominate any colour you put it with now. So that's why I don't often use colours like that phthalo blue, but you know, as you can see, it creates quite an interesting effect there. We may well go back and do some more to that. So that's this field there, and then it's slightly more red there, which gives us those lines that again take us into the scene. Stuff in there, more green. Okay, I'm just going to get the panel covered before I start putting detail in, he says. There's that field there. So there's not actually a lot of detail in the rest of this scene here, but you know, we've painted the important parts. We might just need to sharpen up some edges to draw the attention and so on. Slightly more towards orange, that raw sienna and the red. Again, just not too saturated. You know, it's much too saturated. It doesn't take a lot to throw your painting off. So just where that bend is, we got that. We've got this little dark shadow here. And by painting on this orange panel, any bits I've missed will come through orange, and it'll actually be quite nice. Again, just think about it as a shape. And I'm not necessarily expecting to get much more detail than what I've got here, really. Bigger brush. If you've got a big area to cover, like here, you use a bigger brush. So it's red, not as red as that. Let's add a bit of blue. The starting point. Too dark. Mix some of that. Still too dark. Not red enough. Pretty close, but still just a tad too dark. We'll go with that. So we've got a fairly hard edge there. Got my board out. So just vary that slightly. So trying to get some interesting brush marks in here. It's a large area. Slightly darker over here. Just getting in the main overall shape. Path there, which is just a grey. And we can put some textures in here. So there's actually a shadow across here. So this painting again is about trying to show light, and that's often the case. Certainly the subjects that I like to paint will have light in them, and you know, that's why after doing lots of these mid-journey images I've come to realise I'm going to have to modify a lot of my photographs when I paint them, because although the light was there, it's not in the photo, it just doesn't capture it all the time. So maybe note taking is needed. That little shadow that goes across there. So instantly things like that. Another one there. We start to build the story that it's shadows coming across here. Maybe starts to sort of tell the time of day because of the long shadows maybe. And slightly lighter and warmer on that side of the path. It's only very subtle, but it's little things like that. If you notice those there, it's good. So panel's completely covered. It's just a case now of just adding some detail, but not too much, because we have to say have realistic expectations what we're going to achieve with this. You know, it's not a big painting. So it might just be little dashes like that. It'd be a good idea to get that tree sorted as well. Let's use the side of the brush just to flick up some long bits of grass there. Illusion of detail. Okay. So little things like that. there's a bit of light. Maybe there's a stone wall or something. Just coming across here. There's another one which is going to be in shadow a little bit over there, so make less of that one. There's little flicks of light. It could be a stone or whatever in the distance there. A structure which we don't know what it is, but it doesn't matter. It's just a bit of light. And I'm going to just wipe off that sky. It's just a little bit grey looking. I've lost the light there, I think. So let's just wipe it off. Do it again. Rather than try and put paint on there and end up making it even muddier and making a mess, let's just take it off. It's gone a little bit muddy here. And let's get my distant blue mountain in. So don't be afraid now to just try and fix something if it's gone completely the wrong direction. I just quite like the idea of getting that blue in there because we've got a lot of orange. So it's useful to have your paints in the jars because I've put out quite a bit of phthalo blue, but I'm not going to need much of it. So this needs to be slightly darker. But it's just an experiment, just to just try it. Let's I think because I painted the tree up into the sky a little bit, that I've got that green in there and it just all muddied it up. And it's not easy to improvise and you know, just come up with your own colour schemes in areas. Because you can find that the sky doesn't match the landscape. So you just got to try it. Soft edge there. Then that one back. And if it doesn't work, say just wipe it off and just paint perhaps what's there maybe. So you need to think about this tonally, that's too dark. So let's lighten the value. I'll go with that. I think it's wait till I get the tree on there and then I'll have a better idea. So let's put that distant lot of trees there. We can just about see a few branches sticking up and so on. Let's zoom in a little bit. So, and as you can see, it's tiny, this painting, but we're not going to get sharp detail, and I don't want to. So just breaking up that edge a little bit, which will just pull those trees there in front of ones there which don't have those bits of detail. Tree here. We still don't need any more detail than that. Just lightly touching it with a brush. And then this tree here, which has got some nice warm yellows. Too dark. And I say, rather than green, it's actually more towards orange. Deceptive. So we don't want to be fussing about here, so just lay the paint on. Let's look at the shape of the tree. If you get it slightly wrong, just commit to your shape. And it gets slightly darker where it's in the shadow. Again, all you got to do is just mix up your dark, check it. No, certainly it's not black, which it may look black if you were painting from a photograph. But, you know, if your photographs tend to look like mine, not particularly wonderful. So you have to look when you go outdoors and paint, or just walking around and so on, to just make a note of what colours you see in shadows. So there's a sharp edge there. Adds connection in here. Paint into there. Light against dark. So let's have a look at just sharpening up these houses a little bit. We do that, we could just put in a few distant trees, but literally keep it small, just a few little marks. I'm going to use my mole stick to steady my hand, which is just this wooden stick, so I can get a nice sharp edge. So I want sharper edge there. Bit of light on the side of that building. A lot of this, you know, is not as per the reference, but it's close enough. Does it look like houses? A few darks. Again, a sharp edge and a dark next to a light. And we're going to suggest some windows maybe. The side of the building. The shadow area of that. Window there. Couple of windows, maybe just a few little darks just around this area, which we'll perhaps want the eye to go. So just adding contrast. But just again, remember, it's just a small painting. I can pull a tree across there. I could do with just dropping that down. So we just need a bit of sunlight to be pulled across here, and we can use perhaps a big brush now to do that. Let's find an area of the palette that's actually fairly clean. That'll do. So what we got? Red. It's not as pink as that, so more yellow. Not as yellow as that. More red. No, way too saturated. Bit of white. Not quite as pink as that, so add a little bit of blue. Just a little bit lighter. It's pretty good. So if I nicely loaded up brush, lots of paint, just drag it across, really load that paint on. So again, we're increasing the contrast of light and dark. I'm going to leave some of this to come through. Step back from it. Maybe just one or two little dark areas just to again add contrast. So I think there's more red in there. And it's quite good. I've been quite sort of small, but a little bit fiddly around here. But now let's just go big and expressive brush marks in here. Put a bit of light catching on that tray in there. And no, to be fair, the painting's done. You could just keep going forever and a day, really, but maybe just some of these little bits of detail. I'll use this fan brush here. Put some long bits of grass. Now we're adding a lot of white onto this, so you don't want to be messing about too much. So just there we are, make a decision. That's your brush mark. At this stage, it's a case of just step back from it, have a look to see is there anything you can do to improve it. Maybe some stronger darks in there, really push that feel of light. Maybe even just send that path off around the corner. Paint into the shadow ever so slightly. So probably, you know, this is sort of the distance your painting would be viewed. Put it in a nice frame. But when we get up close, I think the phthalo blue works okay. Added another element to the painting, a bit of interest. So I went at the painting with expectations that I wasn't going to get a highly detailed painting, but I did make sure that I got the tonal values right, and I got the important parts of the shapes right. So around the houses, the rooftops and so on are fairly accurate, not completely accurate, but the path winding into the scene was fairly accurate, and the tree just to the left of the buildings was painted quite nicely. So, but the rest of it is very, very loose, and there's not a lot there. So it goes to show on a small painting like this, 5 inches by 7 inches, it's not big at all, that you know, we've got a full landscape there with just small little marks, but it's the correct tonal values, the correct colours pretty much, although I did vary the colour in the distant mountains, but in the right place, and the mind will fill, the viewer's mind will fill in all the gaps and make it what it should be. So, you know, what else is there going to be? A track leading up into a landscape next to some building shapes and a tree, distant mountains. It's all obvious, you know, that the viewer will turn it into the scene, you know, if you're close enough. There's a lot of edges in there, soft edges, hard edges. You can see just behind me there that this hard edge here, very important part of the painting. It draws the eye straight to there, just as the path disappears around the house. Little things like that, if that wasn't there, the painting probably wouldn't have the same effect. And it can be just one tiny little thing in your painting that will make or break it. So get that right. So give it a go. As I say, maybe if you're not confident to put the marks in the right place, you know, that takes a lot of practice, and, you know, painting is drawing basically. You know, you're just drawing with pigment, so start with an accurate drawing if you're not sure about doing that, but you'll find exactly, you know, what I'm saying there, that painting is drawing. Just by painting, you are practicing drawing. So if you feel, you know, you're not practicing your drawing because you don't want to draw, I'm just happy to trace. While you're painting, you're putting things in the right place, looking at relationships, where's that in comparison to that. So that's drawing. You know, drawing is all about seeing. It's nothing to do with you know, what's in your hand here doing this. It's all about your eyes. Obviously it's something to do with that, you know, but it's more about what you're seeing and looking at relationships and so on. So good luck, and I shall see you on the next video. There you go. Good luck with your painting. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe, and if you enjoyed this video, you'll love this one.